our party. The Liberal Democrats are, first and foremost, a party for people. We hold as our highest aim the creation of a society that is concerned with the advancement of human flourishing. Any course of action that inhibits or constrains human flourishing must be held as antithetical to our cause. Those snake oil salesmen who talk of freedom but seek only to advance their own power must be exposed for the frauds that they are. It's liberty, the freedom to follow one's own natural inclinations, that provides for the greatest degree of human flourishing. Only when free can humans ascend the hierarchy of needs and move beyond their base requirements of food, water and shelter towards self-fulfillment. It is liberty that provides the conditions that are necessary to meet Jeremy Bentham's famous utilitarian maxim that the greatest happiness of the greatest number is the foundation of morals and legislation. Now, the natural inclination of human beings are many and varied, reflecting the complexity of our brains, the different values we were raised with, and the rich cultural milieu in which we develop. These inclinations, as long as they don't infringe upon the liberties of others, must be tolerated, even if we would never approve of them. That we disapprove is not sufficient justification for imposing our will. Our approval is quite irrelevant. The conduct of others should only be held to the standard that it be peaceful, voluntary, and provide no impediment to others wishing to go about their lawful business. Now, this is not an appeal to populism. In fact, it's quite the opposite. To flourish in a libertarian society, an individual must work to provide value to others. The idea of living at the expense of their countrymen is far more palatable to most people. We will not be popular. We will be ignored, cursed, and spat at by those whose golden goose we seek to slaughter. But we will hold our heads high. The arrows and the barbs of our enemies will fall harmlessly at our feet because we cloak ourselves in the immutable knowledge that we are right. The Liberal Democrats eschew the very essence of identity politics. The notion that people can be defined by their inherent characteristics and accorded stratified rights based on their membership of certain classes is nothing more than a caste system repackaged as social justice. To it we share in the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King, that our children grow up in a nation where they be judged not by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. The Liberal Democrats are innovators. We're entrepreneurs and we are disruptors. The Liberal Democrats do not simply seek to better the approaches of the other parties, who do that which is popular regardless of whether it's right. The Liberal Democrats seek to change the fundamental nature of politics in Australia to do what is right, regardless of whether it's popular. Our policies reflect this desire to do what is right, to advance human flourishing by creating those conditions that enable humans to flourish. We're for lower taxes, not through greed or a wish to deny resources to other people, but through the knowledge that high taxes mean that individuals are disincentivised from providing value to others. Wealth is an individual's measure of the value that he or she has provided to other people. Taxation means that individuals can never be properly compensated for the value that they provide, which renders them less inclined to advance their own station. Taxation turns us into crabs, squabbling over the detritus that falls from the ocean of big government. Allowing individuals to retain their own wealth and respecting the choices that they make in how to spend it gives people a mechanism by which they can forge their own path in life, rather than following that which is laid down from on high. All taxes are regressive. All taxes hit the poorest members of our society hardest, regardless of who they're levied against. The Liberal Democrats are for smaller, more limited government. Government, by its very nature, runs counter to the idea of individual liberty. If we are to have a government, it must be reined in tightly, its powers curtailed or handed back, and its voracious appetite for our wealth greatly curbed. Now, over the past century and a half, accelerating dangerously in the last couple of decades, the The size and scope of government has increased dramatically. Now, the sum total of Commonwealth law, state law, council regulations and statutory authority bylaws that we're all currently bound to obey runs to such a volume that no single person could ever comprehend the entirety of it. Nevertheless, we ordinary humans are hit with fines and other sanctions for even the most trivial of infringements. Governments, Commonwealth, state and local, need to learn to live within their means. Budgets should aim for neither surplus nor deficit, but balance. The idea that we can borrow money under the expectation that somebody else will pay for it later constitutes aggression against people not yet old enough to cast a vote. The Liberal Democrats believe that government needs not one, but several handbrakes in order to check its ever-increasing lust for power. We favour a return to strictly limited constitutional government, to return Australia to that competitive federalist ideal the framers of our constitution had intended. At the turn of the last century, Australia had relatively free immigration, very little tax or regulation, and one of two powerhouse economies in the world. Then we unleashed a federal government, and of all the colonies to have been invited to take part in federation, only New Zealand seems to be better off for its decision. The Liberal Democrats believe the impact of government upon the citizenry can be further limited by allowing electors greater access to direct the levers of power. To this end, we propose the introduction of fixed parliamentary terms, recall elections, and citizen-initiated referenda. We're for free speech. In order for an individual to be able to achieve their desires, they must first be able to articulate them. Those individuals who espouse methods which may be deleterious to others cannot be disabused of harmful notions if they're not permitted to express them. The mind is the locus of our humanity. To suppress our minds is to suppress our very humanity. Freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of political expression, freedom of religion, freedom of association, they all hinge upon the ability of individuals to fully express themselves without fear of government sanctions. Ideas can't hurt us, but noxious ideas that are unable to be refuted fester into noxious actions that do cause harm in society. The Liberal Democrats reject the left-right dichotomy, which merely represents two faces of the same tyrannical coin. Left-wing and right-wing are archaic terms that have no real meaning any longer. Today they're just used alternately as badges of honour or epithets, depending on whether we're talking about ourselves or our political opponents. Liberal Democrats realise that politics today is a struggle between freedom and authoritarianism. And the Liberal Democrats remain the only party in the country committed to combating authoritarianism, whatever its manifestation. The Liberal Democrats recognise that a crime must, in order to be described as such, involve an identifiable victim, a possibly no longer living and breathing human being who had their rights abrogated by the accused's alleged conduct. If people wish to purchase and use recreational drugs, have sex with people of their own gender or somebody of a different race, engage in prostitution, gamble, or even ride their push bikes with no helmet on, they should be free to do so as long as they're not infringing upon the rights of anybody else. Assuming all such conduct, of course, entered into without coercion. The Liberal Democrats understand that the cure for such so-called social ills, that is increased regulation and the enforcement regime that accompanies it, causes in nearly all cases more damage than the activity it seeks to curtail. In terms of policing, the Liberal Democrats favour a return to the principles set out by Sir Robert Peel. A police force must carry out its duties with the utmost of transparency, accountability and integrity if it's to be seen as anything other than a paramilitary enforcement agency for the state. The Liberal Democrats are passionate about private enterprise. We recognise that central planning in any realm of human endeavour is a poor substitute for the efficacy of an open market. Whether in commerce, healthcare, education, industry, energy or agriculture, people coming together to create mutually beneficial solutions are always going to create better results than arrangements that are handed down on high by people who have no incentive to create a beneficial solution for anybody but themselves. When property is owned by private entities instead of collectively, then it has value. People will invest time, capital and effort into improving that value because it is of direct personal benefit to them. Privately run businesses have an incentive to respond rapidly to price signals and emerging technologies, where publicly run entities have an incentive to resist change. In matters abroad, the Liberal Democrats again prefer to push for mutually beneficial arrangements over adversarial posturing. We recognise that the more people participating in a market, whether it be financial, commodities, labour, the more adaptive that market will be to change. We now live in a global market. The Liberal Democrats abhor protectionism of all forms, restricting our access to our markets through tariffs, quotas, subsidies, excise or restrictions on foreign ownership only serves to raise the prices of both domestic and imported goods and reduce the willingness of our trade partners to trade with us. Just as the free movement of goods and capital and labour across national borders was the key driver of wealth generation during the last century, that free movement of capital and goods and labour, as well as information and expertise, will be the main drivers of wealth generation in the 21st as the information age blossoms. It shouldn't need saying, but of the two mechanisms by which nations can accumulate resources that they can't obtain locally, the Liberal Democrats are very much fundamentally pro-trade and vehemently anti-war. The cost of conflict, both financial and social, is far too great when the cost of trading with people in good faith is precisely zero. The Liberal Democrats believe that an Australian Defence Force should be primarily concerned with defending the Australian population that pays for its upkeep. It's not our role, nor is it any other country's role to play global policeman. Australian troops should never be deployed offshore without the approval of a supermajority of the Australian Parliament. Such a grave action as committing lives to combat, in full knowledge of the potential for civilian as well as military casualties, cannot be left in the hands of the executive. Diplomatically, the Liberal Democrats believe in maintaining cordial and open relationships with the overarching governing power in any populated part of the world. We support the right of individuals within an already defined national area to secede and to form new independent nations. We reject colonialism and believe in self-determination for all the peoples of the world. We support the independence of Taiwan, Tibet and West Papua. Separatist movements, where their aims and actions remain peaceful, should be acknowledged, and the consideration of the formation of new independent states supported as an ideal solution to territorial disputes. The Liberal Democrats exist to present a credible, comprehensive and complementary suite of policies to the Australian people, to provide a genuine third way for Australia to move further towards securing our future as a peaceful, prosperous and secure nation, and to do so while handing back to ordinary working Australians those rights and liberties that have been eroded over time by the excesses of authority, to free life's canvas from the clutter of over-regulation, burdensome taxation and moral indignation, and allow all Australians the opportunity to flourish instead of simply survive. To tame the vicious tendencies of authority and the smothering embrace of nanny-statism, to welcome those who wish to participate in our markets and to advance the flourishment of humanity both at home and abroad, the Liberal Democrats exist to do what is right.